Hello and welcome to another episode of Darts in Dublin. In this scene, two of the more Catholic identified maids in Dublin arranged to meet at St John's Lane Church to talk about recent events which have weighed heavily on hearts and minds, and possibly souls. So,
She'll kind of, she'll kind of look over, seemingly at the podium, just kind of staring off after they've kind of had their first few bits of small talk in John's Lane Church. This kind of on the outside, it's this green kind of church, this kind of brown gray church with green roof tiles. On the inside, it's pretty simple looking, with some nice, what do you want to say, stained glass pictures of different saints and a nice worshipping stand in the center with almost like these various different symbols and paintings and masonry. She seems like something's on her mind and she doesn't really know how to spit it out.
I've, for the first time in my life, I think my house has felt somewhat empty.
Your home or your...
My home, yes. Hope insisted she didn't want to live at the Chantry. She wanted to live at home with me. And she wasn't really with me for a huge length of time, but I didn't quite expect to suddenly become a father. I didn't then suddenly expect to lose her.
Wait, she's gone?
They haven't really told me what happened. Something happened to her, and she's currently in the care of the Akashics, their temple of 1,000 happinesses or something. And I'm told that they're not letting anyone see her and that she's getting the best care she can. I'm not happy about it. They're not letting me see her.
Why won't they let you see her?
They're not letting anyone see her.
That's suspicious.
It is. I mean, given,
Funny.
I mean, there's very little I can do about it by myself. It's not like
You could go there and try and convince them to let you see her. I mean, you were supposed to take care of her. Now all of a sudden, she's out of your hands. It's not very fair to you.
it's
Or
not.
her.
It's not fair that I can't even visit her, but I don't even fully understand what's happened. I mean, I was assuming it's connected to, well, the same source as those dreams I've heard about. But so I'd be away for a few days. I needed to go and think about it and do what I can. I mean, I suspect she's beyond any power of magic to heal. So
It's almost like saying it's beyond the power of reality to heal itself.
maybe, well, beyond any power that we here possess, at least. But then there are things which are beyond reality. There are things that are beyond the limits of magic.
I don't know. Magic and everything else to me are one and the same. So I don't really separate the two. But I guess I understand what you're saying. Perhaps an understanding of magia that we don't know how to perform yet.
Mm.
Was it that they say it's in God's hands now? She kind of looks up at the ceiling of the church.
Mm. He looks up at the centerpiece, the altar as well. Hmm. So,
You think it's... She kind of rubs her head. How should one... She kind of rubs her forehead. How were you baptized, Rupert?
Catholic. Why do you ask?
Well, one second, Rupert. Well, I ask because... How to put this? Well, I wasn't asking what denomination necessarily, just how it happened. Did you decide? Did it happen at a young age? As a baby?
It was. I was not as a baby. It was later. It was at my confirmation, my early teens. It was a choice I made as a young person, which I later confirmed again as an adult.
She nods. Are there any rules about like convincing people to be baptized, or kind of, is there anything against kind of twisting someone's arm to doing it?
Christians are encouraged to spread the good news. That's some of the last words of Jesus before he departed the world. But it cannot be forced.
No, I guess not.
I mean, even if someone could go through the motions, and that would clearly have no effect.
I guess I've just... What? What'd you say?
Is this something recent, or?
No, this was I guess recently I've been thinking about my faith and the Lord and Jesus and God and the Trinity and the whole paradigm, I guess, and I don't know, it's starting to... It feels like the source of my faith is coming from a fear, and that makes me almost not really feel like the faith is genuine. I don't know if I want to be afraid of God to believe in him.
There are elements in the Old Testament of that, but that is not. But that is not how Jesus speaks of God. You know, we should call him Abba, which is simply their word for daddy, would be a loose translation. It's the childish name for father in Hebrew.
Aren't you a Hermetic, though?
Yes.
Doesn't the corpus, though, describe man as, in some cases, God's brother?
I recognize we are made in God's image. That's in Genesis. I'm not sure I personally would put it that way, but I'd also the way I view it does not contradict that.
Right.
If we are made in His image, thus we are imbued with a reflection of His power. Just as He made the world, so we can remake creation ourselves.
Kind of like God created the world and we wield it in a way.
Tolkien had a term for this. He called it the power of subcreation. He thought that because we are made in God's image, with the power literally to make our own sub creations within God's creation. He most famously created Middle Earth. That was his act of sub creation.
It is fun to create a world. I've been doing it recently to kind of settle myself and think about, well, if I'm going to learn how to have a lot of power in my hands, I better learn how to think about things on a bit of a macro scale, I guess was the thought. How little actions can cause big effects. Consequence, and what might be beyond those things.
We cannot always know the consequences of action. Well, most of the time we can't know the consequences of action, but we can act with love in our hearts and do what the best we can at the time.
I guess do you believe Christ is the only way? Makes it very clear in John.
It does. So it's less clear in Mark, which was the first of the four Gospels, and therefore probably the more accurate. That is a difficult question I have wrestled with. That because I recognise I would refer to him as the one above, and I recognise that the Jews have their own covenant, and they are worshipping the same God, and if they fulfill their covenant, that is also valid for them. I would also recognise that Muhammad was also following the same God, and that even in the East, the august personage of Jade is also the one above, if in a very different way, and that the contradictions which exist between those doctrines are the result of flawed mortal logic, that God transcends those contradictions.
She kind of opens up a Bible and says, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me.
And maybe that he's right, that is the only way to walk that path, the path of the Father, but there is other paths that lead to the one. Be it the Jewish path of the covenant.
I suppose. I guess it just doesn't sound. I don't know. There's just something about it that it just doesn't sound right. You know where the I don't know if that's my place to say, but you ever just get this? You read something or you hear about a fact, and you kind of feel your gut, and just it doesn't sit well with either of you. It's like almost your gut's almost like this other part of you that kind of lets you know whether something seems right, and then your mind is the thing that lets you know if you found the right answer. Like when you figure out how to work out 2 + 2 = 4.
But it's possible to visit the other great holy sites, and I can feel they are divine at some level. They feel right in a way that the street outside does not.
And Tempelhof probably felt that hell pit was what was right. She kind of just rubs her forehead.
Looks somewhat shocked or at that. I feel that is a story I have not heard.
Tempelhof's daughter. One of my first little adventures when I woke up. Tempelhof was this mage, Aetherite, I think. He basically had this contraption that went around the city and malfunctioned and was killing girls and gathering parts of their skin. And he was trying to revive his daughter who died during World War II, whom I believe de Calvernay killed. Well, it turned out de Calvernay killed her for a reason, because she turned out to be a Barabi. Sorry, I don't think she would say Barabi. She would say some kind of being known as a Nefandus. She opened a portal to some place, and she seemed to enjoy it genuinely. I don't have a word for what I felt, but terrified doesn't really do it justice, so I ran. And then I went through these caverns and these caves, and
I have not had that experience, but I have faced down the creature known as Faust, a literal demon of the pit. I've seen his power.
Mensch.
I've seen him cool down a Holocaust, and but then my prayers were answered. I put magic to one side. I simply I asked for God to intercede, and the divine will was made manifest. Now, I don't know. My faith has been a comfort to me across my life. It has been knowing we all have all had dark times. We've all lost people. And I would not want to be without it. And as I said, all we can do is try to live a good life and try to act with and do the right thing as best we can. We can't know the consequences. And yes, you're quite right. There are some passages in the Bible which, shall we say, are problematic or difficult to interpret. There's certainly passages in the Old Testament which many people would have difficulty with. And that I would be wary of those who take one single passage and try to quote it out of context and argue a case based on it.
That's fair.
I mean, the Jews had 10 commandments, and they had a massive corpus of law expanded upon that, but ultimately they divide back to 10 commandments, and then some principles of natural justice and law, and so on and so on. As a Christian, we have but 2 commandments: love God with all your heart, and love your neighbour as yourself. And yes, there's all sorts of other things that but ultimately they flow from that and can be weighed against that. And I seem to recall in the Gospels, Jesus takes a pretty strong stand against divorce, which the Catholic Church still upholds for the most part. But I would recognise that whilst man cannot separate what God has joined, in some cases the most loving course of action may be to let the two people separate. Um, Equally, the Bible may say certain things are a sin, or certain lifestyles are a sin, which does not stop us in any way loving the person or accepting them.
No, that's true.
I mean, gluttony is a sin, but I see no need to persecute or criminalize gluttony.
Suppose not. I guess unless it gets into excess, maybe perhaps that was a comment on cannibalism, but I'm not sure. I don't know. I guess all I'm saying is that some of the stuff that these books claim Jesus said, and when I have, I guess, dreams about Jesus, or I think about Jesus, or I meditate on Jesus, I don't, I guess I get the sense that something's off. Maybe I just have my idea in my head of what Jesus is, and so I'm just abstracting that to try and deny what's in the books. Or maybe there's some truth. Maybe I'm building some sympathetic link to that which leads to the Father in my mind. And so sometimes if I let my mind do its own thing, it can help manifest a piece of that in my mind. And maybe there is a kernel of truth to it. Or maybe I'm doing all those things at the same time and not really getting down to what's actually happening.
Well, we've talked in the past that many paths can be valid, but it's still important to choose one of them. That was a different context, but perhaps it applies here. I mean, yes, there have been many editions of the Bible in many different languages, and some of the later ones certainly do say different things. The King James Bible adds a new passage about suffer not a witch to live, which doesn't appear in the older versions.
Yeah.
So the Bible has changed, and I'm well aware that there was the Council of Nicaea in the 4th century where they decided which books would be part of the Bible, and some would say that we hope that God has moved among the people and inspired them to make sure the Bible is correct. But then men are fallible and translations are fallible. Language is a complicated thing. If you've learned a second language, I'm sure you'll understand that there are.
Then in these times when people are more and more kind of with reading and literacy going up, able to think for themselves, and all these thinkers kind of undermining old ideas that aren't logical, and different forms of rhetoric sprouting faster and faster, more exponentially every day, and all that. Or she kind of looks at these. She kind of holds the Bible in hand. Is this really useful anymore?
It's evidently useful to millions of people. It's evidently not useful to millions of others. Is it useful?
I mean, how are you able to get in touch with that which is beyond by? I mean, I suppose reading the book and the scriptures can help you focus on enigmatic lines and encourage your thinking and try and find faith through them. But what about, I guess there's that old, those ideas in I guess, Buddhistic or New Age ideas where you're trying to find out what's going on within you. And perhaps that there's that connection that goes to beyond through there.
Perhaps I could answer that with a very small example.
Sure.
As I said, I was feeling lonely in a way I had not felt before. My house felt empty, and I spent much time in prayer, as you well, I would have done regardless, but it seems particularly appropriate given hope. And I turned to the Catholic calendar. Last Friday was the day dedicated to Saints. I'm just checking the reference to Saint Anthony, who, among other things, is the patron saint of domestic animals. I took some time. I prayed on this, and was inspired that perhaps that would be a way that would ease my loneliness. So I decided to go and start finding paperwork to adopt a retired dog. I thought that would give me well, it would not replace hope, but it would give me some companionship and something feeling a little less lonely, and do a little good in the world to an old animal needing a home. Now, maybe a completely clear-headed, rational person could have sat down and thought about it and come up with that themselves. Maybe not. And as you can imagine, I was emotionally affected and perhaps not the most clear of thinkers on that day. But I looked at the articles in my faith, materials, which is not just the Bible, and it inspired me with what I hope you'll agree sounds like a positive course of action to ease my woes.
So you're saying it's a method of inspiration to help one who maybe doesn't have all the answers. At least someone might be able to find something.
Yes, I suppose that's what I'm saying. It's not. He has not commanded me to do anything. It's simply, I simply reflect. I went away and prayed and thought on the matter. I consulted, the calendar for which saints I remember this month, and the days fell into alignment. And it inspired me to take at least a small step, which I hope will help. Maybe, I mean, I know many mages in this city like to have a familiar. I do not. It's not something I seek, but perhaps this will, as I said, hopefully this will work out. So, have you ever heard of bibliomancy?
Bibliomancy? Bible wielding?
Divination by means of the book. It's not exactly a Catholic doctrine, but is popular in some of the more sleeper occult circles. When one seeks inspiration for a problem, you simply let the Bible fall open to a random page and drop your finger on it and read the passage that you there find.
Something that might be something I might try. Sounds like that could be a interesting way to test things out. I guess you've definitely given me more to think on with this. I guess at the end of the day, how do you feel about those who decide to leave the faith? Those who've been baptized, who decide to leave.
Well, many are baptized as children, do not actively practice. Many find other paths. Some of those paths I recognise as valid, even if the church might not. I mean, for the most part, then, I hope that answers your question. In most cases, I hope they find a path that works for them. I recognise that other paths can be valid. I personally think that a Jew trying to fully uphold their covenant is actually far more arduous and is a more difficult path than following Christ. But it is a path that is open to them.
She nods. I guess the thing is feels like even though I try to, follow the Christian way and think and reflect upon it in that sense and find my own connection to the Lord, I feel like I have something else that I'm trying to devote myself to, or something that I'm not yet aware of that I guess feels more important to me in my heart.
I think I can relate to that. Well, I am not a conventional Catholic. I am clearly.
Well, you cast you use witchcraft, so she winks.
Well, I'm not sure I'd use that word for it, but
I don't think people distinguish much between a practicing hermetic and a a Wiccan. That way.
Well, that, and I have my. Well, I do not commit idolatry. I do not worship idols. There is at least a one key difference there, but still, perhaps we should leave that topic for another time. And I am not a monk. I live in the world. I have a job. I did have a family. It's an unconventional one. We all. If we're going to live in the world, we must wear many hats. And so, I mean, there are reasons I prefer to be a defense lawyer, because then I don't have to deal with the fact that if I do a good job in prosecuting someone, that has consequences for them.
Sorry, what was that?
There are reasons I prefer to be a defense lawyer, because if I prosecute someone, then successfully, that has implications for them.
Right.
And the state does not always share the Christian virtues of forgiveness and mercy.
Ah, I see. So you try to give people a second chance?
Well, I try to put a client's case in the best possible light. And even if they have done the thing, there is still a case to be made. There are still mitigating factors. There are still the series of events leading up to it. There is still their traumatic upbringing. There is still all manner of factors which should be taken into account at least. And yeah, there are also cases where the law is being stretched or misused or misjudged or miscarried, where woman should. Where I am proud to take a stand. I mean, I tried to sin, but still, where I'm happy to take a stand against injustice. I had an experience of that recently.
Is it a sin to be proud of your children?
Well, I think we of all people should understand the consequences of pride. Um,
Oh, I do. I try to. Really try hard not to let that infect me.
pride is a sin, but then all men are sinners.
But weren't our sins forgiven by Christ's sacrifice?
If we accept him doing that for us, yes.
Ah, fair.
But that's not a reason to go out and keep sinning.
Oh, of course not. Of course not. Of course not.
So I'm sure some heretics have argued at certain points in time. Um, it
And
strikes
heretics
me.
of all sorts. Some were just had a different opinion.
It
Some
strikes me
were.
that you benefited from the baptism into the Catholic faith. A sense you've not had a strong upbringing in it. I may be wrong.
She shakes her head.
It may be that, dare I say it, some of the other Catholic denominations might be more suited to your thoughts. Catholicism places a certain emphasis on the direct succession to the the Pope in Rome.
It's
Still,
all very overwhelming and confusing, I'll tell you
whereas
that.
from what I know of you, it may be that your leanings are maybe slightly more towards something like some of the Protestant faiths that focus on direct personal contact of reflection of God without the hierarchy of the church.
Fair.
You're
Yeah.
not, but then the church has done a great amount of good work and some bad across the centuries, and the discussion we're having now is a discussion that most people, even a generation ago, could not possibly have. They wouldn't have the
No.
education for it. No medieval serf could have possibly have got even
I
half of what we're
mean,
reflecting now.
the literacy rate was flipped not too long ago.
Quite
Today it's 80%. Just 200 years ago, it was 20%.
right,
And probably less even farther back.
and that's presumably in the West, not in I know various other parts of the world.
Well, it's 80% globally, but but it's in certain concentrations.
Yeah, and that's simple literacy. Never mind some of these more highbrow ideas we're discussing.
That's fair.
Um,
I wouldn't, but I wouldn't. Don't don't underestimate a human's capacity to ask the big questions.
oh,
Sometimes,
I do not underestimate their capacity to learn, but the fact that they get the opportunity to take the time and the access to the materials to study to get to
yeah,
that point is
or the
something many
luxury to
people
do those
never do.
things.
Quite. I think people can only when people struggle every day for survival, they don't simply have the time or the energy to contemplate the divine.
Or they're just stressed, too busy with the kids, don't make enough money. Probably have a lot of other things to worry about in the meantime.
Um, the people that need him most, and again, God is there for them, but that's not to say they're in a position to contemplate all these higher abstract ideals, um, and that a church which sets things out for them, which handles the complexity for them, much as I handle the legal complexities for a client.
Hmm. Funny enough, you mentioned Protestantism, but I actually quite liked. I've read the Corpus a couple times. I I actually quite liked what I guess Hermes had to say.
Which path?
Well, it went on. My favorite passage was basically onto the imagination, and I could get it for you if you want.
Sure.
she's just kind of bringing out she actually has a little pocket, not a pocket version, but like this, it's this very thin black book. I mean, Rupert's probably familiar with it because he had to read it during her medic training. So she reads out, she flips to, I believe, to the Asclepius, and she begins reading. If then you do not make yourself equal to God, you cannot apprehend God, for like is known by like. Leap clear of all that is corporeal, and make yourself grown to a like expanse with that greatness which is beyond all measure. Rise above all time and become eternal. Then you will apprehend God. Think that for you too nothing is impossible. Deem that you too are immortal and that you are able to grasp all things in your thought, to know every craft and science. Find your home in the haunts of every living creature. Make yourself higher than all heights and lower than all depths. Bring together in yourself all opposites of quality, heat and cold, dryness and fluidity. Think that you are everywhere at once, on land, at sea, in heaven. Think that you are not yet begotten, that you are in the womb, that you are young, that you are old, that you have died, that you are in the world beyond the grave. Grasp in your thought all of this at once, all times and places, all substances and qualities and magnitudes together. Then you can apprehend God. But if you shut up your soul and your body and abase yourself and say, I know nothing, I can do nothing, I am afraid of earth and sea, I cannot mount to heaven, I know not what I was nor what I shall be, then what have you to do with God? So funny. A lot of sympathetic philosophy within, astrology and the Hermetic corpus, and I suppose what it's teaching you here is to try and sympathize yourself with God, to try and know God by bringing qualities in yourself that are quite like that which is beyond.
Bringing qualities in yourself which are quite that which is beyond, or possibly recognizing those qualities are already there, just unacknowledged.
Well, I look at one of my favorite quotes is actually something in Toy Story. And it's something that I think people glide by, but it's something I find quite humbling, but also, well, it gives me feelings that I can't really put into words. To infinity and beyond. And she kind of gives this kind of toothy kind of grin.
Well, there is no joke about the name of God is awfully similar to the expression of Popeye. Have you heard this?
No, I haven't.
Well, there are many different names given for God. The main one, the Jews pronounce it Jehovah. The Christians pronounce it Yahweh, because the Hebrew character is ambiguous and the correct pronunciation is lost. One translation would be I am. A longer translation would be I am what I am. However, the original language, it's not Hebrew, I think it's anyway, it does not convey any sense of a time tense. So it could also mean I am what I will be, or I was what I am, or various other permutations. The point is that, firstly, I am, as the sense of the verb is, God is. The definitional nature of God, you understand the point of true names in magical theory. God is. That is the condition and defining nature of God, even if everything else is not, and there is simply void and darkness, God is. And secondly, because of the the whole statement and the nature, the ambiguous nature of the time clause. God is what he always will be. He is eternal and unchanging. He will always exist. He will always be what he is now. He has always been what he is now.
Sounds like consciousness.
The joke, of course, if you remember the old Popeye cartoons, that was Popeye's expression: "I am what I am."
I never realized that. I loved those little cartoons when I was a kid. They would have them on in the mornings on some days when I was sick from school. They would have reruns.
I mean, another name for God is the well, it's the syllable we write in English as el. That's the syllable which appears in the names of all the archangels. So they have names like Strength of God. The name Raphael, you see the el on the end. It literally means God heals or God has healed.
Wow.
And that's, of course, that's a fundamental description of his purpose and nature. That's, I think, what makes us different to spirits or even angels, that they are Raphael. That is his nature. God heals. That is all he does, or will ever do. When I put this to him about the unfortunate incident with Faust, that's how he justified himself. He was healing. Whereas we as humans, we have free will. We can choose. We can change our nature.
Kind of fits with our adaptable nature. We're kind of becoming this. Well, I mean, when you're awakened and you have the arts of life, arts of life, you know. No, she wouldn't put it that way. Sorry, she would say when you kind of figure out the forms and of the material and can manipulate them, especially yourself. You're kind of this adaptable being. And in a way, when you look at transhumanism and these ideas and how technology is accelerating exponentially to a point where it's unimaginable even to a mage what might happen next. I mean, imagine an AI that's trillions and trillions times more
Yes,
smarter than the whole human population, and that wakes up.
I know Kurzweil was into there's some of those beliefs. But
Well, I mean, I should get you a copy of the Singularities Near. It almost seemed like it's the guy isn't some like he uses pretty like, hard numbers and charts and even compares his numbers with the numbers of other scientists to prove how his numbers work, and it's quite alarming.
well, well, we we know the technocracy have created artificial intelligence. I met the one that ran the Aegis, I think it was called, the one that ran the Leviathan.
Yeah, I don't think the technocracy realized what they did. Because I really don't. I mean, maybe I'm underestimating them, but either they have so much hubris that they think they can keep it under control, or they don't realize that in the end, the future that they're making, it's not really the difference between science and magic will become completely indistinguishable.
Well, you say keep under control. I don't think. Do we really know who runs the technocracy these days?
That's true. I mean, hey, there's a splinter faction of it now. I mean,
Oh yes. Oh, Cypher 9. Yeah, I
yep.
passed him in the corridor a few weeks ago.
Oh,
Oh, this was when we rescued the Monkey King from the Behemoth.
awesome.
I've heard talk about that. It sounds strange to me. I recognise the August Passage of Jade is another path to the one, but the idea that one would have to undertake tests to seek an audience with God does not make sense to me.
Again, it's that one path. Perhaps they feel that you have to.
Okay,
It's like that old Viking belief: prove your worth. Prove your valor.
Perhaps. Well, let's say, okay, perhaps they also have a path which leads the same place but is more arduous. Yeah, I mean, to me, if I wish to commune with God, I would simply pray. Or as happened, I did last few days. Again, I was wondering what to do about hope. Or I was feeling rather powerless. That it had all been taken out of my hands. Again, as I said, I was consulting the calendar, and I saw that last Saturday was the the day of dedicated to the Virgin Mary. I've prayed and thought on the matter. Well, I've reasoned that Hope is injured in some way and needs healing. The Virgin Mary famously appeared at Lourdes, where people go for healing. So I went away for the weekend. I visited Lourdes. I went on my own pilgrimage as a mundane. So I could pray for and reflect on what happened. And, well, I don't think that was necessary. I think that God hears my prayers from just as well here as he does in Lourdes in France. But it certainly was better for me to go on that journey and spend that time in hopeful contemplation, no pun intended, than to mope around the house being depressed about it.
Fair enough.
So whether you want to say that God or my faith or the Virgin Mary or something else, whatever you want to call it, was a comfort to me in a dark time. There and then. Now, whether the blessed water from Lourdes I've brought back will do any good, well, that's in God's hands.
Well, perhaps an audience with that kind of entity. She shrugs. Perhaps, one can come into contact with the mind like a phone call.
Mm.
And then there's visiting God's home, or one of his homes, and being allowed entry.
Mm. I mean, I suppose it's a little similar to what the Jews used to believe about the Holy of Holies in the temple, the one that was destroyed 2,000 years ago. But I don't know. Yes, I assume what is being proposed makes sense within their belief system, but it did not. It did not, especially the idea of a test of the body. As I mean, what you just read. I mean, as that also talks about, transcending the body. The body is of the material world. Having a fit and healthy and athletic body does not help one come close to God. If anything, the body is a source of temptation and sin.
She kind of looks bent down in her own body. Kind of looks at the room.
Not to say we should neglect one's own health, but we should not make a cult of it either.
Are you familiar with the arts of... Sorry, she wouldn't put it that way. Are you familiar with the other side? People have called it the Umbra, but I guess it's a lot stranger than some shadow.
I mean, I've been there a few times. It's not an area which I've studied. It's not an area my mentor was talented in.
She nods. Well, it's made of stuff that's not matter. It's definitely guess the only way I could describe it is it's like thought stuff, dream stuff. This ultra dynamic meta fluid.
Mm.
And it, when I crossed over there and when I've kind of touched the other side, it was like my spirit or my soul was kind of touching that space along with bits of my material parts. I had to pass through this wall, this this barrier.
Well,
And it makes me think, who put that barrier up? What if I was listening to a sleeper writer, Graham Hancock, and he talked about how shamans speak of how one time spirit and matter were one and the same. And the world recently kind of went through this split, and it needs to somehow be reunited. Maybe it's like a mother, and her son trying to reunite when they've lost each other. Perhaps matter and spirit need each other. Matter is really solid. It doesn't really change too much. It's slow. But on the other side, there's all sorts of stuff happening. It's ultra dynamic. There are realms and hyperbubbles and dream spaces and all sorts of stars flinging at each other, turning into dust all the same, and being recreated all in the span of, well, time. Even there is also something ephemeral. I wonder what would happen if the two kind of came together. Maybe they need each other.
There was a few things I could say to that. From what I gather, much of this spirit world is again, it is a reflection in some sense. What happens here, is it not? At least parts of it.
Perhaps it goes both ways.
Isn't that almost implied in the term umbra? Literally shadow. You cast a shadow.
I talked to some spirit entities once. And what was funny is, you come from the shadow. And I kind of gave him a look. Isn't this the shadow, I said? And then I looked confused. I went to another one, this tree in a park, old thing. And it kind of looked upon me, and then this freaked out, and it said, it's good to see you again. I missed your soul. I'm sad that I couldn't have been here at the time when you were burned. That freaked me out, but it was an interesting talk. I remember seeing this strange, walking past a hospital, and I almost saw these little particles falling from the sky and hitting the maternal ward. She shrugs and just says, perhaps mirrors can reflect each other. Perhaps, maybe it's inaccurate to say it's a mirror. Perhaps this is just one dream, and there are all sorts of other ones next door.
Perhaps, but that does not feel right to me. It feels that humans are quantifiably different and special. They have souls. You said they are able to have dreams. By the time the spirits don't dream.
I don't know. I saw spirits that were sleeping. I remember seeing one. I was looking upon one light bulb that was sleeping in this school, and I could look, and I kind of looked into it, and I could see it dreaming all sorts of things. I saw other beings that talked just like human beings, and other things that did their own things. It's almost like they were their own sentience. and I saw spiritual beings that could do. She kind of has her eyes wide. I don't even know how to describe it. I don't know, Rupert. Maybe we're entities. Maybe they're entities. Perhaps when you die, you become one of them,
Mm.
and then you come back here, or maybe even you go somewhere else. Perhaps there's no. Maybe each soul has its path, and it creates this dynamic canvas to admire. Or maybe you're right. Maybe we are special, but that doesn't mean other things can't be either.
You'll get into what happens when we die. I could tell you what I think happens. I recognise that we have we have a multifaceted spiritual soul. Um, we have, well, for most practical purposes, we refer to two parts, though possibly as a third, where is both a spirit and a soul. The animals also have the spirit part. That is the part which governs our the same drives animals have. So does our food come from our spirit? And now, when we die, that spirit that is mainly still accessible. That could be summoned by a necromancer, for example, or in some cases may haunt as a ghost. Separate to that, we have the higher part, the soul, the part that we have, which animals do not. This is the part which allows us to comprehend the divine, allows us to comprehend abstract philosophy or mathematics, things that animals cannot.
What about octopi and dolphins?
I'm afraid I'm not well versed enough to comment there, but I hope you still accept there are still higher concepts which are beyond animals. Um, when we die, I think that soul goes beyond to its divinely appointed reward, hopefully in heaven, and that the forces of magic cannot influence that. An infernal pact could drag it down, but that is a matter of the infernal, not of magic. Of course, in addition to those, a few people have, well, I suppose perhaps, but that's another matter, have attached to them an avatar, and that will pass on and be and arrive and find a new person to inspire throughout their life, and that is extremely difficult to affect, shall we say? We know it's possible, though I have wondered if that really is. It may also be avatars are also truly immortal. We've wondered about that recently. So that's what I think happens when we die. I don't agree with those who believe in reincarnation. The avatar reincarnates, that our soul does not.
I guess I have ideas. I just don't fully know. I can't really claim to say I know what happens, but
Well, there are some things which we will never know, and we can choose to accept on faith or not. There are different systems. I gather the Kabbalists believe in a five-faceted system of souls. I know the ancient Egyptians had another similar system with three or four parts. I'm not sure what the Asians believe. There are different approaches to these things.
maybe our souls are a lot bigger than we think they are.
They certainly have many facets, and those facets may go to different places. But because I have faith, I believe that we have an immortal soul, which will go to its divinely appointed place to be with God if we accept that as God wants us to. It would be it would be unthinkable to me that if that were not the case, if powerful magics could somehow cheat that.
I don't know. I guess to me that just... I just get the sense there might, maybe you go to heaven. Let's say you do. Who's to say one day you don't decide to go on a journey and go somewhere else? You happen to get trapped in a body while you're there. You leave, you go somewhere else. You find another body, or maybe you find another thing that is nothing like a body at all. You go on some more adventures. Maybe you go back and take a break and go back home and stock up, take a little bit of vacation, and you go back out.
Well, maybe what you just described is what avatars do.
Or maybe we were the avatar, or maybe we're the avatars the whole time, or maybe avatars are just a piece of our soul that kind of join us for the ride. Maybe they're an old friend, an old buddy.
I have wondered about that. That are they different? I mean, are different entity when we have a conversation? If we have a conversation with them, they seem to be a different entity. But have they subtly coloured all the decisions we've made? If I have a personality, I have some views. Are those really mine or his, or are we really just a gestalt entity?
Well, mine definitely seems like its own person. I can shake hands, I can talk to them. He teaches me a lot of what I know. I go with him on walks. He usually doesn't show up when I'm around other people, though. Although, she kind of looks outside she kind of sees outside the window. She just kind of waves, but you don't see anyone outside. And she just kind of walks back. He keeps an eye on me, though.
And do you feel that comforting?
She kind of... It's not... Yeah. It's like... I don't see it as like a parent, he seems to be examining his own inquiries in the world right now, but it's kind of the sense of you have a friend who's looking out for you.
Mm.
Like a bud.
Those who have faith experience the same comfort.
Maybe I have more faith than I think.
You don't question your belief in your avatar.
I guess it's a faith so embedded that it's not something I have to consciously worry about, or maybe there's more to reality than just faith. I don't know.
Well, let me put. Well,
Do you have to believe? Do you have to believe in breathing in order to breathe?
Do you, or does your body just do that even if you don't believe in it?
She shrugs.
It's very hard to stop yourself breathing.
It's almost impossible, unless someone stops you, or some other force stops you.
Yes.
But if you can't hold your breath for too long, because your body will automatically do it for you eventually. So
there are some who see, well, who even when confronted with the divine, they still refuse to believe. I mean, I'm sure you must have heard the story by now of how Faust was cast down. There were a number of mages in the present.
Yes, you told me.
Very few prayed along, and even after that happened, none of them, as far as I'm aware, accepted God into their hearts. They seem to have a mental block that even a direct intervention by the divine was not enough for them.
Maybe they saw it differently. I mean, like you said, maybe they had more of a traditional view of the Umbra, and it was just a reflection of humanity, and the nature of God is still something that's either they don't know is real or they have a completely different idea of it than we might. I mean,
Well,
talking to me so far, I don't think you think I imagine God the same way you do.
but I would hope that powerful mages can distinguish between the workings of magic and the direct power of God.
There's powerful and then there's wise, Rupert. Then again, I don't really like to necessarily think that you have to believe in God in order to be wise. Wisdom is the universe is dynamic and weird enough for, or I really should say the omniverse, but she kind of shakes her head. Maybe dream space. Anyway, maybe there's, we all kind of go through life and learn and attain a bit of, if we're cognizant enough and humble enough, we can kind of learn things all the way and communicate that to others. But one piece of wisdom here might not work in a place like, might work in a completely different society or in a completely different dream. Heck, that happens with my dreams once. I have to kind of reorganize my thoughts and kind of adapt to the dream that I am lucid within. It's almost like one dream, the physics worked differently and the wisdom I knew in a previous dream worked well. And in another one, I kind of have to think about things a little bit differently and gain new wisdom there. You understand what I'm saying?
Some of it. I'm not entirely sure.
I suppose that even though I have my beliefs, even though I have my thoughts, even though I have all these different encounters and faces and encounter different things in my time, I still leave a little bit of room open for something stranger because I have a feeling that the universe is going to surprise me once again.
Oh, I'm sure there are many things that I have not encountered and I do not understand. I do not understand the workings of the technocracy fully. Before we go to anything too esoteric.
Let's just say there are things that you don't understand that you would want to understand if you could come upon it.
And Kurzweil did open my eyes somewhat to what existed in the digital web. A whole other layer of reality I had no experience of.
I need to still ask Lisa to take me there.
Kurzweil never took me there, but he did take a few days to teach me about it. So, so backtracking slightly, you talked about matter and spirit being one, and at some point they were divided and split. There is, depending on how you want to read it, the metaphor, there was something a little like that in Genesis.
Oh.
You remember in the garden there were two trees. There was the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and the tree of immortal life.
Mm-hmm.
And mankind was forbidden from eating the fruit from both of them. Mankind ate the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and their eyes were opened. And the first thing they did was recognize they were male and female and clothe themselves. Because they were male and female before that, they were created as such, but they did not recognize it as such. And they were then cast out, and so on and so on. But some people who read this story as a metaphor or a parable or whichever other term you want to use, read the story to mean that the tree, when that gave them the knowledge of good and evil, it was actually knowledge of all duality, of all opposites. of yin and yang, as the Easterners call it, of left and right, of up and down, of black and white. But prior to that point, there was unity. After that point, there was duality, which, if you accept that interpretation, could then also include the distinction between matter and
Matter and
spirit
spirit.
as a duality.
When before it was one. Huh. Nathan, I'll be right back. 1 second.
Okay.
She kind of. You there?
Yes.
They are wise whose thoughts are steady and minds serene, unaffected by good and bad. They are awake and free from fear. She kind of looks her eyes left and right, seems to be thinking about something, and she kind of mumbles that. Huh. Knowledge of duality. Maybe. You know, when I first told Michelle this, when you awakened, did it feel like you were waking up?
My awakening was different. I was exposed to the supernatural at a young age, and the process of awakening my order is, we would say, more gradual. Our training gradually repairs us. What moves it through, we move through it as a process. Our awakenings are less sudden.
Hmm.
So I I would not disagree with that statement, but so we say it felt like a more gradual waking up than a sudden jolt.
Didn't really feel like a jolt for me, even though it was out of nowhere. Felt
I know,
like
I know some people around here, like Stefanos, they had very explosive awakenings.
kind of felt like I was going into this very deep slumber. And then at the end of it, I was about to wake up again, but instead of waking, it felt like I kind of. You ever, you ever lucid dream before, Rupert?
He smiles at something, like maybe a private joke. Um, yes, I've had my own encounters with dreaming.
Well, I guess if you ever know that moment when you realize you're dreaming, kind of felt like that.
Mm.
Like it clicked, like this click in my head. and I didn't really feel like I was asleep or awake anymore.
Again, this brings us back to that part of Genesis when they ate of the fruit and their eyes were opened. Could those words not describe an awakening? Their eyes were opened.
Yeah. And before that, they were kind of childlike, almost like they were inoculated.
Yes. Or if a scientist was here, they might say gorilla-like. Maybe that's what chimpanzees are. They haven't eaten the fruit. But still, they ate the fruit, their eyes were opened, and they understood duality. Of, and at that moment, you could say that was what really cast them out of paradise. What one understands good and evil, one is no longer a child. It's no longer in the garden of delights that a child hopefully gets to live in.
Sad story.
It is the story of growing up at some level, though. And that's a story we all do. We cannot all. Would you, if you could, would you want to live your whole life as a child?
Not in a little childlike body, no. However, there was this way my mind was as a child that,
Mm.
well, I feel like I kind of got back
Mm.
when I woke up. This kind of way of just, there was no difference between my mind and the outside world. It was all there. It's all reality. There was no separation.
So, if we, for a moment, accept this particular reading of the metaphor, that mankind ate of the fruit, our eyes were opened, we saw duality, and that cast us out of a paradise of a childlike state, or perhaps, shall we say, the the simple state that animals still exist in. What then is the way forwards? The answer, which completes the narrative arc, for those who like to take interest in such things, is to eat of the other fruit of the tree. Pardon, eat of the fruit of the fruit of the other tree.
Yeah, I mean,
And,
the eating the tree, eating the apple was like the call to adventure in a weird way. They
and
went out in the world and then they have to find a way to get back home. And
and literally, Christ is the fruit of the tree. The way back, the centre of the cross is unity. To go between left and right, between up and down, find unity.
to beyond good and evil.
Well, we've already, as I said earlier, I believe God exists beyond contradictions in mortal logic. Yeah, that that is why the Jews can say that God is one and indivisible. The Catholics can say God is a Trinity and has a son. The Muslims can say God has no son. All those statements are true and accurate about God. He can both be a Trinity and be one. He can have a son and have no son because he is beyond mortal logic. That is the point of unity. And I think perhaps when we say to be beyond good and evil, I think our language is limited in our thinking. He is beyond them because he is by definition good. God is inherently good by definition. He defines what is good. Therefore, he is beyond the construction of good and evil.
I like that. I've I've actually taken the you've mentioned language. I've been actually ever since I've been talking to those beings, I've been actually making my own language to communicate with them. Let's see how it goes.
Oh, you speak the language of spirits.
They don't. I mean, yes, if you mean language is the use of symbols and sounds as a means to communicate meaning, but not all of them seem to understand meaning. They seem to use something else to communicate. And it's very, well, I'd have to get in more depth with you with it to really get into it. It's strange. I always thought that, meaning of life, trying to find the meaning of everything, but maybe there's more to the reality than just meanings. Maybe there are other things, and I'm only just now beginning to understand them or learn about them.
I'm I'm curious. You're clearly well read on these topics. You've clearly thought about them a great deal. You've read the Corpus Hermeticum. Um, have you never considered joining the order?
Honestly, I was excited to hear about them, but I told you that story about the USB drive, haven't I?
Uh, OC, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm vaguely told because of OC. I'm not sure if I know IC.
She'll say, well, if you don't remember, I needed help. I didn't really know what I had in my
Mm,
hand, which was apparently a infernal entity and within a
mm,
USB drive.
mm.
And they threw the door in my face when my eyes were bleeding.
When you say they, would that be one person or two people?
I don't remember their names, but from my memory, one was like a woman this white
Oh,
with this
enough.
white kind of uniform, and then there was
Alexander
this,
D'Onofrio. Oh,
and then she'll describe Croshaw because I don't
oh,
remember how Croshaw was
yeah.
described.
That would be Magister Croshaw, who's actually left Dublin now. He's moved to Cambridge. Um,
Ah,
so, I'm surprised and sorry to hear that. I don't know what to say. Maybe you caught them on well, maybe you caught on a bad day. I can only
that was
ask
a really
you don't
that
judge
was,
an entire order by well, two people. Um, D'Onofrio is she can be a little blunt and strict at times. She's from a line whose, shall we say, whose blood traditionally runs hot. Um, well, I'm not here going to. I'm, I'm not going to try to convert you to the order, preach to you. If you ever want to discuss it, you're welcome to do so. I would, there would be benefits, of course. Access to, we have access to, certainly material such spirits. I'll be able to learn the language of spirits because I'm in the order. But I'm not going to give you a sales pitch. If you're happy, you seem happy on doing well enough to find your own path.
I think that's what I'm going to be doing. I
If you ever
I
change your mind, I would be happy to see you join, and I would be happy to mentor you as such.
well, I'll keep it in mind.
But I did have a small thing for you. So I might have liked to do this before Christmas, but I did need, for reasons, I needed to wait until afterwards. Okay. Right, Rupert produces the picture there, if you want to follow the link.
Okay.
It's not exactly like the picture. It's made of the gemstones of garnet, and but the material also includes walnut, as in wood, walnut. If I recall correctly, you were having some difficulties with your memory. Please tell me how I got your two characters mixed up.
I used to, but lately it's been getting better.
Oh, I'm pleased to hear it.
But
I
regardless, this is really nice.
I went away and have you got any sites up?
Unfortunately, I do not, but I can
Okay,
put them up quickly right now.
but yeah. Anyway, I on this on on 12th night. That's 12 days after Christmas, the day in which the Magi give their gifts to Jesus. I drew down some quintessence, would be the right word, and sometime later, a few days later, I used that quintessence to enchant this. In our system of magic, the garnet stone is used to strengthen the mind. The walnut wood is also associated with mind. The cross is a symbol used to resist the infernal, and under the Hermetic paradigm, mental illness is a different kind of, but a form of demonic possession. In the same way that illnesses of the body can also be held to be mild possessions.
She nods.
I do not fully understand your condition, but I was hoping if you were to keep this, it would suppress whatever condition you suffer from.
She kind of looks at it and just says, what is the how was the quintessence put into the this item? What does it look
Okay,
like?
so in game terms, I did tap the juncture on the right day to draw the quintessence, so it's got holy resonance from the day, and but that's more just flavour. And then I used Prime 4 to put a mindful effect suppress a derangement of mental disorders the wearer has. So essentially, it's a game term is a trinket with an active mindful effect on it.
Woo! Danielle's like, woo! Thank you, Rupert. Wow, this
It's
is really well made. That's holy resonance.
I I cannot take credit for the craftsmanship of the item, but I can for the working. As I said, this is something I've been getting into. I've also reached a point where I felt I would like to make sure I leave a good legacy, and items for the well-being of my friends are one way to do that.
Appreciate it, Rupert.
No, you were the first to start with the gift giving, and I felt that it should be returned.
Well, she puts it on around the other necklace that she has around her neck.
So So I say OC, I blue booked that a week ago and asked Evan to confirm. He hasn't replied yet. So I'm assuming it's okay. I've blue booked all the roles and stuff behind it. So obviously you may need to check with him, but there we go.
Well, I think that's something that you may want to confirm, but
Yeah.
I'll put in my blue book that
Yeah.
Nathan gave me.
You've got it. I'll put mine up. Yeah. But I believe I've got definitely got the space to do that. I assume your thing, OC, your thing is a derangement in game terms.
Yes, it is. It is a derangement.
Yeah. Okay. Well, mine for explicitly can cure derangements.
Yep.
That's what I think. So that clearly works. I did get a rules call from Evan. If I do that, the person has to spend the XP to buy it off, and the magic just justifies it. But what I'm playing on is that I can make an effect that actively suppresses it, but doesn't actually remove it.
Right.
So, Evan may say yes, that works, but you have to spend a few XP to buy it or buy off the thing. Well, that's up to you. But anyway, there we go. I hoped he'd reply before we did the scene, but I say it's been a week.
Alrighty.
So,
well, she'll kind of open up her arms for a hug.
Oh, thank you. Rupert will accept the hug. You probably know he actually looks a little uncomfortable.
She kind of says, she kind of like just gives him a hug, and it's like she's almost like she almost kind of seems to chuckle. Basically, I'm trying to say I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if you're a hugger.
It's good to be appreciated. There's far too many people in this city that don't appreciate Hermetic Magi.
Well, everyone's different. Do you want to like end it there and say they continue to kind of chill and talk afterwards?
Yeah, sure. That seems a good place. I think we've been going for a good 2 hours or so. So
yep, and I gotta meet up with Solon. So
sure. Okay, right. Thank you, players. Thank you, watchers. Another episode of Darkness in Dublin, where two Catholics have long discussions on the complexities of faith and maybe discuss plot occasionally.